Hey, good people, this is Struggling with Diabetes and Kicking Ass. Hey, good people, I'm struggling with diabetes and I'm winning big. Listen, I've been struggling with this chronic illness for over 40 years. I'm still standing, I'm still learning, and I'm still kicking ass. So if you're over 60, you have type 2 diabetes, or you know someone with type 2 diabetes, you're in the right place. Let's talk real life about diabetes. No hype, just health. So I remember back in it was the late 70s or early 80s. In there sometime, I don't quite remember. Even 78. It could have been 1978, 1979, 1980, or 1981. Nevertheless, I remember being on my parents' insurance, and I was preparing for college and all of that, getting getting things in order, like my school testing and all of those things. And one of the scholarships that I was awarded, one of the prerequisites was to have a health screening. I don't remember all of the details. I just remember my dad telling me that I needed to go have blood work done, and then I needed to go see the doctor, healthcare professional. And at this time, I was with, or they were with Kaiser Permanente, and so that meant I was up under that plan. So around there, I was a teenager. And so I remember going to have the lab order satisfied, and then they called me in. I believe it was the same day. Then they used to do all of their lab work right there on site. And you go downstairs in the lab, and they'll draw your blood and take your urine, and then they do whatever necessary tests that needed to be done, or whatever was ordered by the healthcare professional. So did that, and I remember this doctor, female doctor. I remember waiting for the doctor to come in. And so she came in, black doctor. Me being a teenager, I could remember she being, of course, older. At the time, looking back, I would guess she was maybe in her 40s. She didn't have gray hair, but just her mannerisms kind of suggested, she wasn't like 60 or 70. She was more in her 30s, 40s. So I remember her coming in her white jacket and her device around her neck, stethoscope, and she had a chart, and she had my lab results. And so she came in and she said, "Okay, do you know you are pre-diabetic?" And so I looked at her like, dog ears, head to the side. Like, not that I was saying I didn't know. It was more or less I was ignorant to even that word, diabetic. I didn't know what that meant. I just didn't know what it meant. Diabetic, did I know? And then to say pre-diabetic, that was a big construct for me. Pre-diabetic. I knew pre meant before, so um, does that mean I'm next? Or does that mean, I didn't know what it meant. And so she looked, but she kept talking as if I knew what she was talking about. And then so she started to tell me all of the risks that were involved in being a full blown diabetic. And so she said, well, let me explain to you what's going on. She says, your body isn't getting the sugar out of your bloodstream. You know, typically your body will send the sugar or the waste through your kidney, through your urine, and get rid of it. It comes out. But what's happening, your insulin, your pancreas doesn't know what to do with that sugar, and so it stores it, it keeps it, and with that, it becomes a danger to your blood vessels. And then by being a danger to your blood vessels, it starts to constrict, it starts to block, it starts to, protest against the proper flow of blood in your body. And then that causes things like blindness, that causes things like kidney trouble, that causes, in other words, it attacks all of your major organs in your body. So I'm still kind of bewildered, but at the same time now I'm interested in understanding how my body works. Because you have to remember, up until that point, I didn't know what was going on. I remember my dad having to take this thing and stick in his finger, me being 12 years old, being 13. No, I wasn't even that age. I got to take that back. I was more like 15 years old, 15, 16, when I would see my dad do this, because he was a young man when he started, pricking his finger to push it out and get a drop of blood and put on this strip and put in this machine, and it'll give a number. It will say, like 150 or 200 or 257. I didn't know what that meant at the time. And he would say his sugar was high. And so now I'm trying to understand what the doctor is saying. So she says, if I don't get control of what's going on, then I'm going to be a diabetic. And I don't want that. So there's some things I could do right now, back then she was saying this, right now that I could mitigate, or I could either slow down that process or slow down the progression of the inevitability of things to come, or I could reverse it altogether. And they weren't options, those were realities, because if they were options, of course I would have opted to reverse it, put it behind me so I could go forward and do what I was going to do. So I asked her, I said, so what are some things that I could do to not deal with this or not have to, meet that demise? So she said one thing for sure, and that's eat better. And so I couldn't articulate what eating had to do with the struggle I was now partaking in. And the struggle meaning striving to push the diabetic the diabetic situation as far away from me as possible. That's the struggle, or that was the beginning of the struggle. And so she started to break down what food does. You know, she started to talk about the carbs, carbohydrate. She started to talk about the, just straight out sugars. Started to talk about how it's broken up once it gets in the body, in the bloodstream, how carbs is broken down to sugar and all of these different things like that. She started to break it down. And now I'm really starting to get a better idea of what's going on in the life even of my father at the time, and his struggle and what he had to deal with. He never opened up to me, not open, that's the wrong word. He never discussed it with me. Of course, I'm a kid. He didn't discuss that with me. So she told me, she said, make better food choices. At the time, the way she gave it to me, I guess it was very simplistic, because she said, stop eating donuts, stop eating cookies, stop eating cakes. That was basically it. Stop eating candy. Well, my dentist would tell me that. And so I was born with a sweet tooth. So it was kind of a whammy on me because, I just had to have it, anything sweet. But as a child, I would eat anything. I had no problems with food, whereas my siblings, they were very picky when it came to what they ate, the food that my mom would cook for dinner, for lunch. Not too much for breakfast. They used to eat whatever for breakfast because we either ate cold cereal or hot cereal or bacon and eggs. And we hardly ever ate bacon and eggs for breakfast in our house as kids. That was too time consuming. My mama, she had to go to work. So she wasn't about to get us up and then go in the kitchen and fix some eggs and some bacon. And no, she bought a box of cereal, cold cereal, a gallon of milk, at the time, half a gallon or a pint, and that was our breakfast. But she would make lunch, a sandwich and some chips, and dinner, whatever the dinner was. But I didn't understand even then how other things are broken up and classified, as sugars or as things that would be detrimental if I didn't take an account for it and not just go willy-nilly and just, eat like crazy, I had to learn to be intentional, So I stopped eating a lot of cakes, cookies. Then it turned into eating more processed food, like fast food, I didn't understand that eating bread, like a hamburger with bread and with cheese and, all that other stuff, I didn't understand that actually breaks down to sugar too. So while I was consciously not eating cupcakes and eating candy bars, I was still eating hamburgers, French fries, all that other stuff. But you have to remember, I'm still barely 20. So from 20 to 30, that's what I did. Then I started gaining weight, a lot of weight. I started working at this couple of fast food places, and I remember the guy that hired me, he was a best friend at the time. And he hired me at this chicken place that I was working at. He hired me to come in. And he told me, he said, listen, you are going to gain weight fast if you don't watch the amount of chicken you eat, because you get to eat as much as you want and it's free. So just be careful. I'm like, yeah, I can handle that. I was there probably 6 months, and within 2 months, I gained at least 25 pounds. At least. At best, probably 30, 35. But that's where I got huge. Started getting huge. And so now, my late 20s, I'm even bigger because I'm not consciously aware of everything that I'm putting in my body. I'm not consciously aware of what's called the diabetic coma that I have. Well, I won't even say diabetic coma, because it's not a diabetic coma. It's almost a diabetic, the knowledge of a diabetic coma. You understand what I mean? I know it's crazy, but making myself oblivious to going into a diabetic coma, making myself oblivious to the knowledge of what I'm doing is going to kill me or is going to hurt me really bad. Why? Because I'm a young man now. I'm in my late 20s, in my 30s, and I got things to take care of. I'm dealing with stuff now. I got my own problems, trying to earn money, and so my health, that's on the back burner. I'm good. I get up every day. I'm straight. Little did I know that I was creating a habit that was going to be hell to turn away from. And a lot of people, they develop, for type 2, I'm talking about, they develop diabetes early in life, and they don't realize it. The onset of diabetes is there, but they don't realize it. Either they've never come across anyone that may be diabetic, or they have shielded themselves of that situation. Or maybe it's like a purposed protection for their sanity. I don't know. But diabetes doesn't start one day and is full blown the next day. There's a progression in type 2 diabetes. There's a progression. Type 1, there's a whole different story. But type 2, there's a progression, meaning it goes from 0 and it climbs. And if you don't have someone with the wisdom, knowledge, and or understanding of what it can do, the possibilities, and then the projection, if you could find someone like that, that would be like gold almost. But more than likely we can't. So what we do with the experiences that we are now developing and we are now harboring, we can help someone. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. To share perspectives, point of views that I have in terms of struggling with this chronic challenge. I don't look at it as a problem. I look at it as a challenge. So even back then in the 70s and now 2025, there's so much I have come to learn come to know, and so much that I have become wise about now. Things that I tell my children, listen, especially when I see them eating too much of a certain thing, not just cakes, not just candy, not just drinking soda. You know, all of that is detrimental, yes. But give alternatives, other suggestions, other things that can be done. Instead of drinking soda, drink some tea, iced tea, until you could get that monkey off of your back. You know, go ahead and use cane sugar. No high fructose, high syrup, corn syrup, all of that trash, you know, because it's setting you up. I did, when I turned 30-ish, 35, somewhere in there, about 35, I started to open my eyes and my ears about being a diabetic. All the way from being a teenager and hearing the word pre-diabetic, now double that, and now I'm finally understanding diabetes. But even then, I still didn't like run to the racetrack and bet. Why? Because now I became an individual in denial. It took me 15 years plus, well, about 15 years, from the time I was 17 to about 35. That's plus 15 years. It took me that much time to get to the place that I would develop a callus and became this individual who was in denial about the whole thing. No, I don't have that. That's what she was talking about? No, I don't have that. I can control what I have. No, I could. You want to know what happened after denial? Guess what? I'll tell you in part 2. This is Struggling with Diabetes, and I'm kicking ass. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.